तू जिंदा है तू जिंदगी की जीत में यकीन कर, अगर कहीं है स्वर्ग तो उतार ला जमीन पर। तू जिंदा है तू जिंदगी की जीत में यकीन कर, अगर कहीं है स्वर्ग तो उतार ला जमीन पर। तू जिंदा है। तू जिंदगी की जीत में यकीन कर, अगर कहीं है स्वर्ग तो उतार ला जमीन पर। तू जिंदा है। ये गम के और 4 दिन, सितम के और 4 दिन, ये दिन भी जाएंगे गुजर गुजर गए 1000 दिन। ये गम के और 4 दिन, सितम के और 4 दिन, ये दिन भी जाएंगे गुजर गुजर गए 1000 दिन।
कभी तो होगी इस चमन पे भी बहार की नजर,
अगर कहीं है स्वर्ग तो उतार ला जमीन पर। तू जिंदा है तू जिंदगी की जीत में यकीन कर, अगर कहीं है स्वर्ग।
हम कैसे समाज में रहते हैं जहाँ पर इंसान को अपना ही जीवन जीने की आज़ादी नहीं है?
Women being raped and children being killed, and how insensitive our society has become.
People are not wrong. What is wrong is their religion. What is wrong is their social ideology.
Now the point is, do we want to sustain institutions in which equality and liberty cannot be sustained?
एक समय था जब गरीबी से लड़ने की जरूरत थी, अब वो समय आया है जब सांप्रदायिकता से लड़ने की जरूरत है।
Struggle against communalism can be properly waged by young people like you if you constantly interact with people who are around you.
People are having so much of myths regarding Muslim community.
हमारे खेलों तक पे असर देखने को मिलता है।
अपने निजी स्वार्थों के लिए, निजी लाभ के लिए वो पूरे शहर का, पूरे समाज का माहौल बिल्कुल खराब कर देता है।
I refuse to believe that a majority of our media is spreading hate or prejudice.
आपस में इस तरह की चीजें चलती रहे, समाज बटा रहे और उनको रोटियां सेकने का जो मौका मिलता रहे।
Generally, the people who perpetuate these crimes, they get away without getting any punishment.
Suppose such a carnage breaks out around you, what are you going to do?
Don't forget Afghanistan, don't forget Taliban, don't forget that these are the consequences of great internal strife produced by the same factors at work in our part of the world. Don't forget that.
Fascism in India will not come in the form in which it has come in Europe. Fascism in India will come in the form of communism.
Even if not in the short run, I'm quite optimistic in the long run it will be defeated. It has to be defeated because it cannot survive. Because history has not been shaped like this. And history will come to the rescue of the future of a great nation like India. I'll talk about communalization of history, which would be seen also as communalization of education, because history is part of it. There are a large number of other areas which are also being communalized. While speaking on a theme like this, it is important that we think of the kind of terminologies that have been bandied about over the last decade and a half. 3 things been quite prominent. 1, rewriting of history. 2, distortion of history. 3, communalization of history. But let us first look at what is rewriting of history. Many of us who fall on the wrong side of the Sangh Parivar, largely believing in the secular worldview, the democratic worldview, and also cherishing legacy of our freedom struggle, the entire political processes which helped us as Indians emerging as a nation in the course of our struggle against colonial rule, colonial domination, whichever way you want to remember. But why do we fear this rewriting? Because of a variety of reasons. The kind of history writing which affected us the most has been the writing of colonial writers. Most prominent will be 2, Eliot and James Mill. And James Mill's classic classification of Indian history as the Hindu period and the Muslim period and the modern period, a student of history must be already familiar. But those who are not must have had the advantage of having been exposed to James Mill kind of writing of history. When he described Hindu period and the Muslim period and then the modern period, he did not say the Christian period. Because a period can't be determined by the religion of a particular ruler or the dynasty. But James Mill did that. People like Romila Thapar, people like R.S. Sharma, people like Satish Chandra, D.N. Jha, so many others are being projected as intellectual terrorists. These were the people who challenged this notion of understanding about Indian history, and they said that it can't be described as Hindu period, Muslim period, and the modern period. How will then such a position take into account the Vijayanagar Empire in southern part of India? Falling almost around the same period, Vijayanagar Empire was not a Muslim empire. Large number of such smaller empires in the southern peninsula, for that matter whole of Rajasthan, western part of India, northeastern part of India of course is a different geographical entity at that particular point of time. I can go into multiplying these examples only to argue this point. Just because there were some rulers in northern part of India, or even if they had spread their empire in other parts of India, does not necessarily qualify it to be called the Muslim period. How was the Muslim period projected? Muslim period was projected as what they perhaps must have thought of a dark age, tyranny, oppression, violation of women's body, and things like that. And he said that as compared to the kind of historic experience you as Indians, but they had Hindus in mind, gone through, contrast that with our kind of thing. That within 50 to 100 years of our rule in India, we have been able to give so much to Indians. And therefore you should be grateful to us. We have come here as emancipator. We have come here as liberator. And James Mill is no ordinary person, a very powerful intellectual of his time. But the way he is trying to project Indian history is to project Indian history in terms of Hindu, Muslim, and modern. And you have colonial writers like Rudyard Kipling telling Indians and describing them as half naked and half hungry, and therefore they should rely on their British masters. Communalism is essentially a colonial knowledge. What is this colonial knowledge? Is that a small incident of conflict between two religious communities, and for convenience, at least for our understanding, some kind of clash in a small locality in the region of Banaras, which had taken place around 1811, and subsequently whatever number of clashes that might have taken place. They were projected in colonial official writing as well as colonial academic writing as a kind of a perpetual conflict between Hindus and Muslims. Many historians emerged during 1920s, 30s, and 40s. 2-3 names will be quite prominent. Ishwari Prasad, Beni Prasad, Tara Chen, very powerful intellectuals and historians and political commentators of their time. In the course of their writing, they tried to challenge precisely this notion of history as it was handed down to Indians by the colonial writers. They said that this is all rubbish. We do not accept it. And then they went into writing another kind of history. They tried to establish that while tensions were there were large number of areas of reconciliation, coexistence, adjustment, accommodation, and give and take. The only thing which happened with the history writing of large number of historians who were also in a way quite impressed and influenced by the ongoing nationalist processes in 20s and 30s. There was another stage that comes in the rewriting of history, and that is the stage of 50s, 60s, and in many ways till 70s. So you have practically 30 years of the history writing scene dominated by Marxist historians. What could be wrong with Marxist historians, as we are being told by the friends in the Sangh Parivar? That, 3 things that they fear: Macaulay, Marx, and Madarsa. So Marxist, who are these Marxist historians? Irfan Habib, R.S. Sharma, in the recent generation of historians, Kane, Panikkar, and many like him. Who are these Marxist historians? These are the Marxist historians who challenge Marx's own formulations. One particular incident that I would like to share with you, and to say that how these Marxist historians themselves have been quite a critic of Marx's own formulations. When Marx was trying to understand the world history, he tried to understand it in terms of mode of production theories. So you have the primitive communism, then you have slave mode of production, then you have feudal capitalist mode of production, and then the society would usher into socialist mode of production. But in the course of formulating his mode of production theory, he also said that there was another mode of production that existed in Asia, and he described it as Asiatic mode of production. His Asiatic mode of production theory was challenged by Marxist historians. This was done in 50s. Large number of people who challenged that Marx was quite off the mark in his understanding of Indian history, Asian history in general. And then obviously they applied their own framework and all that. But from 80s onwards, once again you can see that the landscape of history writing has undergone drastic changes. And it is this kind of writing, history writing, that is dominating the scene in last 20 years, particularly 15 years. So, you have history of language, you have history of community, you have history of identity, history of all such issues which are not necessarily falling in the framework of Marxist method of history writing. The point which I have tried to argue, using all this much of time to drive home only one point, that nobody is scared of rewriting of history. Only when one is scared of rewriting of history, when rewriting of history is not seen as a professional exercise but as a political agenda. Let me pick up some of the examples from contemporary India. Large number of news channels are engaging historians and others, and some of the people are self-imposed historians. One of them will be Dr. Parveen Togadia, because he is not only an oncologist, but he is also trying to project himself as a historian. Let me quickly share why does it give us a cause to concern when it comes to rewriting of history in the manner that NCERT is doing, or in the manner that Sangh Parivar has been trying to do for considerably long period of time. This kind of project has not been a new project only ever since the NDA government came to power. It has been on since 1950s. Ever since R.C. Majumdar produced Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan series, History of Freedom Struggle, it's been on since then. And it will be on even if this government is gone and you have a Congress government or somebody else coming to power. This kind of mentality, this kind of orientations, this kind of ideological proclivities will continue to dominate. It's not that they're going to disappear, because after all they have been able to establish a sufficient space in the society and the mental landscape of certain kind of people. We all have already known that Gandhi's assassination by Nathuram Godse is largely being ignored. This is another kind of rewriting of history. One way of rewriting of history will be to project that all rulers, Muslim rulers during medieval India were as tyrant and as bigoted as, say, Aurangzeb. Even about Aurangzeb, there is a lot of debate which is going on. A lot of historians are coming up with new kinds of facts. And in Banda, there is a huge Shiv temple. And in that Shiv temple, the Farman of Aurangzeb has been preserved by the chief priest, where he had made generous grants for the construction of a Shiv temple. And the story that goes in that area is that Aurangzeb happened to camp in that area, and one day he noticed that there was a small, not so noticeable Shiv temple that existed. And he found out, and he said that people don't have enough money in this area to build a huge temple. And after that he sanctioned quite an amount from his exchequer, and he said that let there be a huge temple there. So rewriting of the kind, where say for instance NCERT books, the newly published books, the entire Sultanate period has been described as Ghaznawadis. Now the problem is that entire Sultanate period prior to the Mughal, if you describe them only in reference to Mahmud Ghazni, who is responsible for invading India for so many times, and also bringing Somnath temple under attack. Does it mean that all the rulers of the Sultanate period were exactly like this? I give you one example where how rulers resisted attempts by ulama to influence the policy of the state. Alauddin Khalji is one such example. The late 13th and early 14th century ruler. He got into a massive debate with ulama when they tried to influence the state policy, and he said that the entire state should be run according to the requirements of Sharia. To which Alauddin Khalji replied that enough of you, we are not going to do anything like this. Some people approached Hazrat Nizamuddin Auliya. He said that we want to convert to Islam. He said that is not my business. I'm not here to convert anybody from Hinduism to Islam or some other religion to Islam. It is entirely up to what you wish to do with your life. All I am concerned here is to preach the larger message of love, brotherhood, humanity, etc., etc. But there is another misnomer that these people would like to make a part of the project of rewriting of history. And that is that Muslims are outsiders. They are foreigners, etc., etc. Isn't it? That's the general impression that is given to, and not only the Sangh Parivar, but in the larger perception, this also comes as a important highlighted fact that Muslims came from outside India. If you try to, truly locate, historically speaking, Indian Muslims, then it comes out very clearly that overwhelming majority of the people did not come from outside. They all are the descendants of the local converts here. They might have come from, in rare cases, the Brahminical classes, Rajputs, others, but in majority cases they came from the lower order of the Hindu society, suffering all kinds of privations, discriminations, lack of respectability, etc., etc. I'm sure you all must have been exposed to literature produced by many of their founders, such as Savarkar, Golwalkar, and all these people. Golwalkar goes to the extent of describing Muslims as guests in this country. How did he arrive at this conclusion that the Muslims are guests in this country? Muslims have been as much part of the land as anybody else. But this understanding that the Sangh Parivar is now trying to project in the larger project of rewriting of history, I'm not really bothered about rewriting of history, but rewriting for whom and rewriting in the manner that you do. Does it really subscribe to the rules of the discipline of rewriting? You have to have facts to rewrite history. You can't produce myth after myth in order to rewrite history. What is going on in the name of rewriting of history is exactly this kind of myth. Distortion in history writing has been quite a long drawn out project. But why are we worried in the present context? That this distortion of history writing, which was taking place in 50s and 60s, did not carry any respectability in academic and journalistic and the popular domain. People wrote about it and it was dismissed. But why this distortion of history becomes important in today's context is precisely because of the changed political landscape. That this distortion is being accepted as the authentic history. As part of my research, which one has been carrying out for some time, and also with the help of many historians who have been working on the theme of partition extensively, they have come out with certain statistical analysis. And I particularly owe this statistical data to an American historian called Ian Talbot. Ian Talbot's most famous work has been Punjab and the Raj. But not so famous work is Provincial Politics and the Pakistan Movement. And there he deals with Pakistan movement in 4 Muslim majority provinces: Bengal, Punjab, Sindh, Northwestern Frontier province. And he has worked out certain statistical data to argue that in 45-46 election, not more than 12 to 13% of Indian Muslims had franchise. Now, if you look at the final tally of the results of 45-46 elections, of this percent, that is 12 to 13%, 75% voted for the Muslim League, which is overwhelming percentage of the enfranchised sections of Muslim population, and around 20-25% still did not vote for them. They voted for Momin Conference, they voted for the Unionist Party, and likewise. That means for the partition of India, the responsibility of about 8, 9 or 10% of India's Muslims was there. 90% of Indian Muslims did not have a choice. Jamiatul Ulama Hind, All India Momin Conference, Shia Political Conference, Majlis-e-Ahrar, and large number of bodies, they formed a very important body called Azad Muslim Conference. And with the help of this body, and this body is formed 1 month after the Muslim League adopted the two-nation theory resolution and demanded a partition of India. And they challenged Muslim League, except that the followers of the Azad Muslim Conference or the followers of the Jamiatul Ulama Hind and all that were not the enfranchised lot. And that is how Muslim League was able to carry the day electorally. Now, when I refer to Parveen Togadia as a historian, this was, I can tell you the date, on the 29th of August night, I was surfing channel, and suddenly I discovered Parveen Togadia as a historian. And he said that 90% of the Muslims voted for Pakistan. I mean, like, contrary to all facts. So this is distortion of history. But why did not bother people then in 50s and 60s? Precisely because of the kind of legacy that average Indians were still carrying on. The legacy left behind by Mahatma Gandhi. Pandit Nehru was still there. Maulana Azad was there. So very large number of nationalists, and therefore it continued. So they said that Marathas' struggle against Mughal should also be treated as freedom struggle. Not many people took it seriously. And likewise, when Savarkar wrote 6 Glorious Epochs of Indian History, it did not create any kind of stir in the academic circle. But why does it create that kind of stir in today's time? Because, you know, like an impressionistic mind, or those people who are not students of history, if they get to hear, and this has been true because not many people went out to challenge these kind of claims that vast majority of the Muslims were responsible for a partition of India. What bothers me as far as imparting education to school children is concerned is the distortion of history. Creating a kind of a citizen who will grow up doing nothing but hating his neighbor who doesn't conform to his worldview. The way Indian history has been shaped, it has been shaped with entertaining all kinds of diversity. And these diversities are historically conditioned. Look at religion, look at language, look at region, look at food, look at dress, look at whatever. These diversities have been historically entertained. Germany. The kind of history writing that was carried out from 1870s till 1930s and 40s, the supremacy of a particular kind of race, and there's a German race, and highly industrial people, you can give all credit to them for their ingenuity in large number of areas from the Enlightenment age onwards. But the problem was with this kind of history writing was when they try to attain that supremacy. And he said that here is the superior race. Obviously, once you have accepted as the superior race, rest of it will be inferior to you. And as a consequence, not only that the Jews of Germany suffered, but the Germans themselves suffered. Once you try to communalize history and therefore also communalize the entire education landscape of India, what will happen? You will generate a false notion in the minds of the young children. And as contrast with the point which I made a while ago, that instead of generating critical consciousness, you are trying to generate a false consciousness by communalizing history. Everything perennially flowing from ancient time down till this period, great discoveries were made by Indians. But those discoveries need to be looked at critically. Great achievements were made in the field of literature, in the field of philosophy, in the field of classics of all kind. But we all need to develop a critical understanding about this rather than being blind and generate kind of myth about them. When you communalize education, you communalize the mental landscape, then you communalize the approach, then you communalize the society, and finally you push the entire society to the point of disaster. What they must realize, as we all realize and we continue talking about it, that you can't wish away Muslims. You can marginalize them, but you can't wish them away. It's a nation which has come out of great difficulties, because you see, in the course of its formation, large number of things have already happened. Partition being one. It was not an ordinary event that the country was partitioned. The manner and the processes we all can keep on studying. But, you know, from there, India was not declared a Hindu state. It could have easily been declared a Hindu state in the heat of the movement. But then nationalist, leaders, they were not of the mold that they would have easily succumbed just because one partition had taken place, so therefore declare India to become the mirror image of Pakistan. They said no. But now the fear, 55 years after, there is this fear that they are pushing India to become a Hindu state, which must never happen. And with this conviction that India belongs to everybody, and this everybody means Hindu overwhelmingly, then you have Muslims, you have Christians, you have Sikhs, you have Dalits, you just think of the kind of people, and they all are there. If we have this conviction that India belongs to everybody, with certain critical understanding of issues, only then we will be able to take a very firm and formidable position in the public realm. All those who are well-meaning academicians must come out in the open. They are doing it. In last 10 years, they are doing it. But they must do so more regularly in order to retain certain sanity and balance in the society. And the kind of project that these people have taken, even if not in the short run, I'm quite optimistic in the long run it will be defeated. It has to be defeated because it cannot survive, because history has not been shaped like this. And history will come to the rescue of the future of a great nation like India.
इन काली सदियों के सर से जब रात का आंचल ढलकेगा,
जब दुख के बादल पिघलेंगे, जब सुख का सागर छलकेगा,
जब अंबर झूम के नाचेगा, जब धरती नगमे गाएगी, वो सुबह कभी तो आएगी, वो सुबह कभी तो आएगी।